Okay, tonight's topic is tactics at a windward mark continued, part two. Hope you were all here for part one, where we covered more strategy of where you want to place yourself coming up to a windward mark, so that when you exit it, you're in the position that you want to be, either for strategic reasons or because you have to stay away from other boats. So you put yourself either in a good position to be strategically, or a position to control other boats, or a position to keep other boats from controlling you, or just getting out of the pack. I had a couple of questions from last week asking me to cover, well, what changes if you're at an offset mark? I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that, but my thought is really not much. It just splits the decision into two parts. One is, where do you want to tack to come into the windward mark? And then at the offset mark, how do you want to round the offset mark in order to position yourself downwind? And it's kind of my opinion that the choices are all still the same. It's just split into two parts instead of one. Does anybody else have a different opinion?
Well, since I posed the question, my experience has been typically, I think I tend to head straight for the offset mark and hope I stay high enough to go around it, and then bear away as soon as I get there, or jibe if that's what I want to do. Although there's something to be said for continuing on a closer reach and then making the bear off more quickly, and particularly if there's someone just outside me. I may want to carry them up in order to, for tactically positioning, to go around the offset on a little bit broader reach than just a straight shot from the windward mark to the offset.
Yeah, I think for the same reasons you might want to come in a little bit high to a windward mark so you can round tight if you want to jibe quickly. Those reasons would be the same for coming in a little bit high to the offset mark because you want to jibe quickly.
Okay, good enough. Thanks.
And then I asked,
You weren't the only one
Eric,
that
does
asked.
it make a difference?
What's that, Jolene? Jolene, what were you saying?
Go ahead, Ellen. You started to say mark room applies. Well, Ellen was also talking. Ellen, you want to ask you a question about mark room applies?
So yeah, that was the question. Marking also applies at the offset, which actually brings up another question about where to set the offset as far as how far away from the windward mark, but I don't think we need to go there right now.
Well, actually, that was the conversation Eric and I had on the walk to the mailbox was, does it change the tactics or strategy if the offset mark is poorly set? Set too close, set too high, set too low?
Well, I said,
Eric, what were your thoughts when I asked you that question?
well, if the offset mark is set too high, you run basically runs the risk of it turning into just another windward mark. I've sailed in races where people came to the windward mark and then they couldn't fetch the offset because it was so high, and they actually had to tack to get to it. And I think that eliminates the usefulness of having the offset mark if it's too high. Also, if it's too low, you run the risk of boats are going to come around the windward mark and they won't even sail to the offset mark if it's too low. At that point, it only becomes a matter of, prohibiting your jibe, an early jibe. So, well, Jolene asked me, well, where should it be set? And my response was, well, I think an offset mark should be either even with the windward mark or maybe 10 degrees below, but not much further down than that. And really not very far away. In terms of boat lengths, we talked about numbers, and I think, maybe 5-6 boat lengths away is plenty. It really should be, well, it shouldn't become a reach leg. The purpose of having an offset mark is to reduce traffic around the windward mark. to spread them out a little bit before people start jibing. So they shouldn't be far enough apart that they really become separate legs of the course. Although technically under the rules, they are separate legs of the course. But it should be close enough that we still consider it all the Windward Mark. Does that jive with everybody else's
And then
opinions?
the other comment that I'll make in general, well, one comment I'll make in general, I don't ever hear racers giving race committee feedback when the offset mark is poorly set and takes away from the tactics. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're racing.
Also, as Jolene pointed out when we were discussing this on our wanted mailbox, we're not likely to see as many offset marks this season as we have in previous ones. With the emphasis going on having race committee light, race committee is going to be setting fewer marks, trying to get away with fewer personnel and simplifying the courses. So we aren't going to see as many offset marks. We aren't going to see as many gates at the leeward mark. And at the club level that we normally race at, really offset marks aren't entirely necessary, in my opinion. They are a mechanism, as I said, to reduce traffic. So if you don't have a lot of boats, they don't really do much for you other than keep you in practice of going to an offset mark should you go to a larger regatta. Okay, have we beaten that topic enough? I think so. So tonight's topic was boats coming into the Windward Mark on opposite tacks. And I think this is going to turn into more of a rules discussion than a tactics discussion. As I said last time, the rules are written to really discourage boats from coming into the Windward Mark on port tack. And tonight I'm planning to help describe why. Okay. So consider this diagram of two boats coming to the Windward Mark on opposite tacks. And actually the port tack boat, as I've drawn it here, has gotten to the zone ahead of the starboard tack boat. And if they come up a little bit, what happens if the port tack boat hails for room? Is she entitled to room? Does the starboard tack boat have to give her room? Any ideas?
No, it's starboard tack.
No,
Starboard tack priority, no room. The port tack impossible.
Okay, so let's take a look
It sounded like it might have been Sonia.
Oops.
Do you hear me? I mean, this is a port, for me, hi, this is a clear situation, port tack over starboard, you know? This is the typical that somebody shouts, room to somebody who has no clue about the rules.
And Sonia, a lot of our racers don't know that quite as strongly as you do. And so that's kind of why Eric's mentioning it, is to bring that out to the table.
Oh, okay, great. No, I'm glad. No, this is good. I like to listen to this. It's very, very, particularly at this time of, you know, when this COVID-19 and doesn't let us go out in the water, you know. I like to discuss about racing rules. There's always something to learn, you know.
Okay, well, here's the racing rule that applies, or that shows that Rule 18 doesn't apply. It's Rule 18.1A, which talks about, well, 18.1
Eric, can you
is
focus a little bit?
well, it's on autofocus. This should be as readable as it gets. Rule 18.1 is when Rule 18 applies. And it says, or 18.1a says, it does not apply between boats on opposite tacks on a beat to windward. This is one of the exceptions when it specifically does not apply. Because really, Rule 18 is all about making mark roundings safer. Marks are places where boats come together and there's a lot of traffic. So Rule 18 is here to formalize the responsibilities of all the boats at the mark so that as they're coming to the mark, everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And if you had boats coming to the Windward Mark on port demanding room, then that would create havoc. So it specifically turns off in this case. So let's continue to play out this scenario. And you see, as I've drawn it, at position 3, the green boat has to head up to avoid contact. She has to change course, take avoiding action. And at that point, at position 3, is when the port tack boat red breaks Rule 10 on opposite tacks. That makes sense to everybody?
Protest.
So
What was that?
that will be protested, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Say that will be protested.
So that's something that I learned. You know, if you're both three, if you're in the both three, you're the green boat. As soon as you have that one, you need to protest right in the spot and make sure that everybody hears you, and you call his name, and you remember the leg and the race, everything, in order when you have to go into the protest room that you remember everything about it.
I would also suggest a better reply than starboard might be no room.
Yeah, but
Eric,
he's
what do you
asking
think
you
of
for
that,
room, and you
saying-
say, well, yeah, that would be the first thing. I mean, to be kind of say no room, and you know what, you have no rights.
Well, I think either way, you're telling the other boat that
Well,
you're not
and
going to
then-
let her in.
You even
And I think starboard is a reminder of, hey,
but
I'm
you
starboard
have
in your
to-
port. You have to keep clear of me.
But you don't
Yes.
have to say anything at all until protest. That's the only thing you're required to say.
Right, but the
yeah,
benefit
I
of
totally
saying
agree with Dave.
starboard-
You're required to do protest at the spot.
But
This is
the benefit of
a
saying
classic
starboard,
spot.
right, but the benefit of saying starboard at location 2, the red boat may avoid the green and not cause the foul. So by saying starboard, you may save yourself the altercation.
Yeah. Oh,
I
no,
agree.
no, I
Basically,
agree.
more,
I agree.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm just saying the hail is not required. I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs because 1, he's not right, and 2, I don't want to get hit. You know, and I don't want to have to, you know, but I'm just saying that you don't have to say anything.
Well, there are some judges and
people-
some very senior judges, such as Dick Rose, who was the chair of the World Sailing Rules Committee, who would disagree with that, who would say you have to hail starboard, because if you don't, and there's contact with damage, you haven't taken all possible avoiding action. And there's
what if
actually
you
a
don't?
case in the casebook, number 107, that says that you do have to hail. However,
What if
most
you don't see
judges
them?
interpret it the other way and say you don't need to hail.
Yeah.
And the case 107 itself has some problems it's somewhat self-contradictory on that matter. But the topic of this discussion is not the casebook and not the requirements for protesting, although Sonia, you are correct. You do need to hail protest immediately. And depending on the boat, you might have to fly a flag. And just out of curiosity, because you mentioned it, does the other boat have to hear you
I ran
hail
into that
protest?
situation before.
I beg your pardon, Sonia?
It helps. It helps a lot. I've been in that situation before, and it helps a lot with other people, you know, in case that you need to bring them into the judge room. But I do agree with that, like you did say, you know, and I think it's proper to say when you're in boat number 2 or even 1, you know, actually 1, when you know that you're entering the circle, you just want to avoid any collision there. You just have to say, there's no room, I'm a starboard boat. I mean, sometimes when there's so much wind, they cannot hear you, but you yell like as loud as you can. And when if you're in a competition, you know, national, international, you definitely, as soon as you know you're position number 3, you need to yell protest as loud as possible and call the cell number. And another thing that I ran into the situation that so many races, I forgotten, actually, this was my mistake. I didn't know it was race, it was leg 2 or 1 of a race. And I was just trying so hard to remember and I missed it. I will never forget that. And you know, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you just think that, hey, I just protesting, I'm fine. But then when you go to the judge room, you need to remember what race was it and what leg was it. So
Yeah.
I don't want anybody, you know, that's why I bring this up, because I don't want anybody to run into that situation that I went through before.
So, Sonia, one thing you could do is bang on your hull, because they can't hear your voice. As crew, I do that a lot. Now we have a tank, but I make a really loud noise on the hull, so they're like, "What's that?"
That's a good point. I like that.
Well, the rules require you to say the word
And
protest.
Also in our club, there's a lot of people who are stealing hard but don't watch the sea start to go.
Right. You're required to say protest, but they don't have to hear you.
Correct.
And I mean, this might be deaf. So requiring them to hear you would be impossible.
You have to say the word protest, but if they don't hear you, that does not invalidate the protest. It's still valid. If your boat is over 6 meters long, you have to fly a protest flag or your protest is invalid. Your protest must be written, doesn't have to be on a special form, but it has to be written, and it has to identify the incident. The one thing that the protest has to do when you hand it in is correctly identify the incident, because if it does not, it's not valid. So Sonia, you're entirely correct. You need to correctly identify
And then
the race you're in and the leg you're on and the position on the course you're at. You're also required to identify the boat you're protesting and whatever rules you think they've broken. But those facts can be, if they're incorrect on your form, they can be corrected before or at the meeting, at the hearing. So the most important parts are saying the word protest and correctly identifying the incident on the form. But let's move away from that because we've already spent quite a bit of time here and this wasn't really the topic I wanted to discuss. Most of what I was planning to talk about was revolving around Rule 18.3, tacking in the zone. And it says, if a boat is in the zone of a mark to be left to port, passes head to wind from port to starboard tack, and is then fetching the mark, She shall not cause a boat that has been on starboard tack since entering the zone to, I'm censoring the word either, sail above close haul to avoid contact. Or let me say that again, since I inserted a word that I probably shouldn't have. She shall not cause a boat that has been on starboard tack since entering the zone to sail above close haul to avoid contact. And she shall give mark room if that boat becomes overlapped inside her. When this rule applies between boats, Rule 18.2 does not apply between them. So there's some important things here. This is only between a boat that tacked from port to starboard in the zone, and there's another boat coming up that was on starboard since entering the zone. You know what? Let me back up. I got ahead of myself. So let's go back to this picture and go on to the next image. So, and I'll play this out again and show that actually the port tack boat needs to duck the starboard tack boat. This is what red has to do.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just a straight starboard port situation,
Yep.
then port needs to duck starboard. Okay, now let's go talk about tacking in the zone situation. I've shown here 2 boats are approaching the mark, and red is a little bit ahead of green, so she thinks she can tack in front of her. So at this position, red has completed her tack. She is now the clear ahead boat, and they're both on starboard tack. So actually, red is now acquired right of way, and green has to keep clear of her. But Rule 18.3 adds the additional requirement, or the additional obligation, that red cannot cause green to sail above close haul to avoid her. And if you play this out a little further, you can see, yes, at position 4, green has sailed above close haul to avoid red. So in this example, red has not broken Rule 10, nor Rule 13, which is wild tacking, nor Rule 15, which is acquiring right of way. But even so, she's still broken Rule 18.3, tacking in the zone, because she's caused the starboard tack boat to sail above close haul. Any questions?
So why is that boat? Yeah, why is the boat sailing above close haul? It says, I got a little bit of a problem here, because I could see if number 4 was to windward. I mean, I could see if the red boat or the green boat was a little bit to windward, and the red boat came up and caused it to go above close haul. But by sailing slower, she's not causing her to go above close haul.
Dave, look at
She's
position
causing her
4.
to do something, but she doesn't have to go. She doesn't have to go above close haul. She can slow down. So it's not requiring her to sail above close haul. Yeah, it's requiring her to slow down, not go above close haul.
Look at position 4.
It's requiring
And
her
that's
to
gonna
keep
allow-
clear.
Yeah, but it doesn't say.
It's requiring her.
It doesn't say. It doesn't say. It doesn't. The red boat can't do anything. It doesn't say the red boat has to do everything to avoid green boat. It says it cannot cause her to sail above close haul. It's not causing her to sail above close haul. It's giving her an option to sail above close hauled or to slow down. That is not causing her
Or
to sail
to-
above close hauled.
Dave, there is no rule
It's
that
giving her an
requires a
option.
boat. There is no rule that requires a boat to perform a specific avoiding action over another. When a boat
Yeah,
has to,
that's-
when a boat has to avoid, she can avoid in any way that works for her. And if that is sailing above close haul,
Right, but
then
here's
she
the
sails above close haul to avoid red, and red breaks rule 18.3 here. No, she doesn't
I
have to slow
disagree.
down.
I think, I know she doesn't
I
have to
think
slow down, but she's also not required, it's not forcing her to sail above close haul.
At position 4 in this
It's not
diagram,
what-
if green did not take an avoiding action, she would have hit red in the transom.
It
And
doesn't
Dave-
say, it doesn't say the boat that tacks on port must not cause the boat on starboard to take avoiding action.
True.
That's not what the rule says. It doesn't say
As
The
the
boat on
as
port
the stern
tack
boat, she's still
and must
required to
not
take avoiding
cause-
action.
the boat on starboard to take avoiding action. What? It doesn't, but the rule
So
doesn't
what we
say
have
must take
here is
avoiding
actually-
action. It says must
Right. Right, so what we
Cause
have
her to
here
sail above
is where
close
two
haul.
sailors, right, so Eric, what Dave sees the diagram, and Dave totally follows what you're saying, but Dave has a different opinion about how the rule's interpreted. And this is where you end up with being in a protest room with the judges, and then what do the judges actually interpret?
Right, and it's also where you can
There's
have an
another
appeal,
variant of what you
because the rule
described.
doesn't say
There's
the
another
boat
variant
on
of what
port.
But doesn't the green boat have to keep rule 12 anyway?
The boat clear ahead.
Well, also, the green boat could pretend to be interfered with and head up, and there was no risk. How do you judge that?
Okay, well, let's play this scenario
You can fake
again.
it.
Let's play this scenario again. At position 1, they are on opposite
Usually you say,
tacks.
hold your course.
At position 1, they are on opposite tacks, and Rule 10 applies on opposite tacks. And green, well, red has to keep clear of green. Okay?
Correct.
At this point,
Mhm.
red is still on port tack. She's head to wind. She's still on port tack, and green is still on starboard tack. So nothing has changed yet. The moment red passes head to wind, she's technically on port tack, but Rule 13, while tacking, applies. And red still has to keep clear of green until she's on a close hauled course.
Correct.
Now, Eric, you might have misspoke. You said she's on port tack, but I think you meant she's on starboard tack.
Correct. As soon as she passed head to wind, she was no longer on port tack, she was on starboard tack. Now, at this point, red has completed her tack. Now they are both on the same tack and not overlapped. So now Rule 12 applies. And green, as the boat clear astern, now has to keep clear of red. But because red has acquired right-of-way, she's bound by Rule 15 to give green room to keep clear.
So the way I always see the situation is that, look at that, she tacks within the circle.
Well, regardless
And
of that,
if she
yeah,
tacks within the circle and the green boat's coming fast, comes fast and needs to avoid it, Well, look at that. Yeah. So that's, I get Dave's point, but as soon as he has to avoid it, if the green will tack outside the circle, then I'm with Dave, unless you bring the green boat to left, then you're full. But you can bring it all the way to left if you are outside. But if you are inside the circle, the green has the right of way to keep his course. He needs to,
Well-
he's allowed to keep his course. He doesn't have to avoid you.
No, actually, at
I'm
this
reading
point,
Rule 15 here, and Rule 15 says that
okay, Rule 15 says that red has to give green room to keep clear, which she does
right.
in this example, because green can luff up and avoid red. And when she does, she establishes overlap, and now it is not Rule 12 that applies between them, it's Rule 11 on the same tack overlapped. And red, as leeward boat, still has right of way, and green, as windward boat, still has to keep clear of her, and she does. So far, none of those rules have been broken. But in addition to all of that, we have Rule 18.3, which says, she shall not cause a boat that has been on starboard tack since entering the zone to sail above close haul to avoid contact. And that is precisely
Right,
what
and my
green has
point-
done. She has sailed
Repeat that
above
again.
close haul to avoid contact. So at this moment,
My point
red
is,
breaks Rule 18.3. No
Yeah, I
rule says that a
disagree.
boat
Even
has
though
to
green
slow down
is
to
not
avoid contact
even-
rather than to head up.
But it does not say, the rule does not say that after a boat on starboard tack, after in the zone, it doesn't say the red boat cannot cause the green boat to do anything. It says it cannot cause it to go above close haul. That was a choice to go above close haul. It was not a requirement. The boat could have slowed down and not had an overlap and not gone above close haul. It did not cause it to go above close haul. If they came in and they were overlapped to begin with and red came up, that would cause it to go above close haul. But she did not cause her to go above close haul.
Well, I feel we're going around and around
to
here.
slow down or go above close haul.
I feel we're going around and around here.
Yeah, I do
Because
too.
green could have slowed down, she could have ducked underneath red, or she could have luffed up. And nothing in the rules requires her to slow down or duck under at this point. If she feels she can go
Nothing
up to avoid
required her to
contact,
come up.
she can go up to avoid
Nothing
contact,
requires her to
and red has caused her to sail above close haul. So I stand by my statement at this point
nothing,
that
nothing.
red has broken Rule 18.3. I don't think we're going to get any further arguing about
First of all,
this.
it said, right, well, no, but
I'll see if
No,
I can
but we
find
need
a
to
case
talk
on
about,
that.
I understand that there's no word around it, but we need to talk about the Rule 18. There's something particular in Rule 18 that says about the circle. And that will clarify, I mean, that's my point about the Rule 18, is when you are in the zone. That's the difference.
Tacking in the zone says if a boat in the zone of a mark to be left to port passes head to wind from port to starboard tack and is then fetching the mark. And that is exactly what red has done. She is in the zone at position 2 when she passes head to wind from port tack to starboard tack. So at that moment, if there is any boat that is on
What,
starboard tack since entering the zone, is caused to sail above close haul to avoid contact, then red breaks Rule 18.3.
right.
what
And my
would
whole argument is that
So I'll go to show another example
what would
here.
red do to?
Here's another example of if green has overstood the mark a little bit. And red does the exact same thing. She tacks But instead of going above close hauled, green simply hardens up to close hauled. In this example, red has not broken rule 18.3. All the other rules still apply the same. At position 3, red has completed her tack and is now either clear ahead or overlapped and is the right-of-way boat. So at position 3, now green has to keep clear, and she does at position 4. And red has to give her room to keep clear, and she does. And she hardens up to close hauled, but does not sail above it. So all of the other right-of-way rules are exactly the same between the two. And because she has not caused green to sail above close hauled, she does not break rule 18.3.
What constitutes evidence that you've sailed above close hauled? Is it you have to demonstrate a luff?
Yes.
Basically, you have to almost go head to wind.
Mm-hmm.
No, you simply have to sail above close hauled.
My point being that you didn't say proper course, you said close hauled. Well, you trim
Close
it in,
hauled.
you can point higher. You come up, your sails still look fine. How's anybody supposed to have evidence that your course was close hauled?
When you go to a protest hearing, you're going to tell your story, and you're going to present whatever evidence you have, and the protest committee is going to make a decision as to what it believes the facts are, and whatever the facts are the protest committee decides on, those are the facts. So if you sail above close hauled, it would be better for you to say to the protest committee, I sailed above close hauled and my jib luffed.
Yeah, that'd be better.
Now,
Of course,
if you were sailing with your jib out
No, wait,
and it
wait.
luffed, then you're not above close hauled. It's just a matter of you have to be convincing in your testimony and perhaps have convincing witnesses that show that you sailed above close hauled.
Right, but it's
Dave?
That's not really about the
legit.
rules. That's about
It's
how to
on the
win in a
defense
protest hearing.
to say, I didn't see a luff on his sail. He didn't sail above close hauled.
And the judge will figure out what they believe is the truth. So if the
So
course
as
is
a-
not set square, and you sail and you go up, but you didn't go above close hauled, is the rule broken then?
That's what I'm showing in this picture right now, is that green did have to head up to avoid red, but green did not sail above close hauled.
Okay.
And in this
If
case,
you were-
red did not break a rule.
No, but JC is talking about, JC, if you can come up further, you overshot the mark and you're actually coming down. If you don't go close hauled, you're actually coming down on the mark. You're on a reach.
If the course is set square, but often at my lake it isn't.
But it said, if you got to come up to close hauled, and now this is an interesting point. Eric, he said, listen, the entire fleet overshot the mark. They're not on a close haul, they're on a reach. And the same situation happens just about the circle. And they've overstood it, right? And they're coming down on it. So green boat has room to come up to close haul. Is that still, it didn't say deviation from course, it said go above close haul. So technically, red can do it.
Yes.
If red can get in here and complete her tack and round the mark without causing any of the starboard boats, however many there might be, coming in from above the mark or on a close reach or beam reach or something other than a beat. Anyway, if she doesn't cause any of those boats to sail above close hauled, then she has not broken this rule. But this is a dangerous thing for red to attempt, because it's a fine line between forcing somebody to sail up to close hauled and I won't say forcing, causing her to sail above close hold.
True, but what you're really saying is, in the last few minutes of the course, I just got I got a header on port, I tacked over on starboard, basically, which is lifted to close haul.
Right. If red gets a favorable wind shift at the right moment here, then maybe she can pull this off. If she gets an unfavorable wind shift here, she's definitely not going to pull it off.
Yeah, she's
And
bad.
if the green boats are savvy and they see red coming in to do this, and they want to mess with red, they can come down a little further, get up behind red, and then luff up. So while this can sometimes work for a port tack boat, it's a very risky maneuver.
Yeah, because the green can cover your wind and you're dead there. You know, it depends on how much wind you have there.
I see on the race course when I'm out doing race committee or when I've been out as a judge watching, in large fleets, very competitive fleets like the Melgus 24s and J70s, and I see this happening left and right. And I'll see lots of contact and lots of boats trying to sneak in and lots of boats being forced up. And it's a real mess.
Hopefully tomorrow.
So Eric, this is Scott, just and maybe an ignorant question, but the green boat is behind, but potentially has an upwind advantage if they could slightly catch up to block the wind from the red boat. Is that anything to think about when you're in this situation where you're so close?
Actually, the red boat is the one that, the red boat is the one that's going to be giving the green boat bad air. It's ahead and to leeward, and it's giving the green boat really bad air.
Okay.
Everybody thinks the bad air is to leeward, but it's you know, it's off the hip. If you're nose behind and to windward of somebody, you've got bad air.
Okay.
If
Thanks.
both boats were coming into the zone, let's go back to here. If both boats were coming into the zone on starboard tack, then red would certainly be in a better position because, as Dave says, she would be casting dirty air on her.
Okay, so it's the
Red would be
reverse of
casting
what I was
dirty air on green.
thinking. Okay.
And if red pulls off this tack and it stays ahead of green, then she's going to come out ahead because she's casting dirty air on green. But if she causes red to sail above close hold to miss her, she breaks the rule. So it's, I say there's potential that it can work out for red, but it's high risk.
Yeah, the green has momentum. You know, unless you have a very good tack and you do your tack ahead of the green, you'll be fine. But if you don't, the green will blank you from the wind, and you'll be running over the mark.
Because green has
why
not
usually
tacked,
only the
she's
top
probably
sailors
coming
will
in
go
with
kicking
more
in there.
momentum and likely overtake red, as Sonia said.
You need to come with a good roll tack.
Yep, good roll tack. Maintain your speed through it. Otherwise, you're dead.
Yep.
Okay, so here's another example. The other part of Rule 18.3 is if you tack in the zone and a boat that was on starboard tack gets an inside overlap. And remember that said, if the boat becomes overlapped inside her, or she shall give mark room if that boat becomes overlapped inside her. So if I let this play out, you'll see that green, who is in this, the way I've drawn this, is slightly understood the mark and has to shoot the mark. Although red has gone above and tacked and pretty much stayed away from her. At position 6, she does not give green mark room. Green actually contacts the mark here. So in this drawing, red has not given green mark room and breaks rule 18.3.
There's plenty of room there. You can tell that 0.5 is laughing.
And the way I've drawn this, I said, yes, green has understood the mark and has to shoot the mark to round it. But in
Right.
between positions 5 and 6, red does not give green enough room to shoot the mark and pass it. She is obligated to give green mark room and does not.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Maybe it's the picture that really does not portray that very. Yeah, I agree with that. You know, you need to give room. But
So let's watch this play out and watch particularly between positions 5 and 6. So here, green comes up, and in order to clear that mark, she has to almost pass it before she turns down. But red is right in front of her. So to avoid contact, she has to turn away
I got it.
and hits the mark.
Yeah.
So this goes to defending how much room is enough room or how much room isn't enough room.
So you can also
And
say
basically-
that,
Nobody by 5. By if you're in both green and you're in 5, you say room, 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 and you know that's why you yell. But yeah, I see the rule play there. You know, at red board at 0.5 issue, I've gone a little bit wider there to give me
right,
room.
red should have gone wide enough to allow green to pass the mark head to wind and then turn down.
Yeah, green can push the red up, can push the red to a last position, I believe. So correct?
Well, in addition to rule 18 here, as of position 4, green is the leeward boat and has right of way. So red not only is obligated to give green mark room, red is also obligated to keep clear, which she doesn't.
Yeah.
Now, green is obligated to, when she changes course, to give red room to keep clear under rule 16, 16.1, and arguably she does not. However, rule 21 exonerates her for that
So many
because she's sailing within the mark room to which she is entitled. So the end result of this is that red gets penalized for breaking rules 11 and 18.3. So I hope from these drawings, it becomes clear that the rules are really written to place a lot of burden on boats that approach a leeward mark on port tack. They're really written to say
Windward
either
Mark.
at starboard port, or if you tack, you have to not cause them to sail above close hauled, or if you tack, you have to give them mark room. In all of these instances, the obligations are on the port tack boat, which is why I said last week, you really don't want to come into the mark on port tack inside the zone. So this is what happens if there's traffic at the mark and somebody tries to sneak in on port tack. So you see at position 2, let me actually back up. You see at position 1, red is actually ahead. She's leading. But as she's coming up to the mark, she sees a green tack boat, starboard tack boat, green, coming up, and she has a choice. She can either bear away to go behind, or she can try to come up and tack inside. If she bears away to go behind, then she'd better watch out, because there might be more boats coming behind, and she may have to duck not only green, but also yellow and blue, and however many other boats might be coming. If she tries to come up and she tacks in the zone, she can't cause green to sail above close hauled. So she can't stick her nose in and try to shoot the mark. She has to peel away. So you see, even though red was ahead coming into the mark, if she comes into the mark and there's a line of starboard tack boats, she's either going to have to duck them all and come out behind, or peel away and come around again and be even farther behind.
Tough call.
So this
What
is
was
where-
that?
Well, that's a tough call. It's all about, it's a tough call. Hey, are you going to lift it? You're not going to lift it. It's like, you may see that all the time.
Shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Yeah, well, what I see in big fleets, like when we're at regattas, there'll be a line on, and it's really not on the starboard ley line. The first couple of guys are on the starboard ley line, and then the next 15 are overstanding, because if they don't overstand, then they're eating dirty air all the time. So it's better to overstand. And so if you come in and it's the 15th boat in line, they're so overstood, you can tack easily and not take them above close hauled. If it's the first few boats, no, highly unlikely. But in a big lineup, when you're in a single line, they're really not on the ley line. They're all overstood to keep from eating dirty air. So that's when it would be tactically advantageous to come in on port if you were, mid-fleet in a big fleet where they were lined up like that.
So Dave,
You still got to be able to tack and keep clear of that boat that's coming in because he overstood a little bit hot.
Right, but he overstood, so you
okay.
tack.
If I'm tacking, I don't have rights over the starboard tack boat.
No, but I'm saying they're above the ley line. So you tack on the ley line, you're below them, and now you can take them up if you have to.
So Dave,
because they've overstood.
Are you saying, Dave, that you're actually kind of comfortable tacking in the zone at the Windward Mark?
It depends on where I am in the fleet. So, if it's in a small fleet, say 10, 12 boats or less, no, because they're going to be on the ley line. If I'm in a big fleet, like 30 boats or more, and I'm somewhere in the middle, yes, because from what I see, and I've had it happen to me, because more often than not, I sail rather conservatively, and I'm on the ley line, and actually I'm above the ley line and overstood to keep from having dirty air. And I've had a lot of really good sailors come in on me underneath using that as a tactic, and they do it very well. Because there's the ley line, and you can't line a bunch of boats up on the ley line, because you just every boat gets further and further and further back. Your separation gets bigger. So when you tack onto starboard, you end up tacking high. You go above the ley line before you tack, and it could be way out, it could be right on top of it. But so it kind of depends on the size of the fleet, and the type of boat and the aggressiveness of the fleet.
Well, if somebody finds a spot, if boats have left him a spot on the ley line that he can tack into and still make it to the mark and not miss the the mark because he's underneath a bunch of boats all casting dirty air on him. And he can pull it off and the other boats give him room. Maybe he'll get lucky and do it, but he'd better be pretty good at it and he'd better have just the right opportunity.
So
Yeah.
Eric, we need to do a time check. Was there more that you wanted to go through for the session?
No, this ends what I had prepared for this session.
Okay.
If anybody has questions on this. My goal really was not to say what's right tactically and what's not right tactically, but from a rules perspective, Red might be able to pull this off, but it's very risky, and the rules all line up against any port tack boat coming in.
Mhm.
So Eric, as the novice sailor, I think in this group, I tend to be sailing when I'm coming to the mark. I tend to be aiming for it basically, and I think what you're telling me is that I shouldn't be doing that. I should be tacking to reach the mark outside the circle. So I should be make that. So I shouldn't be pointing to the mark, but I should be pointing to starboard of it.
JC, are you talking about coming in to the mark on starboard tack or on port tack?
Either way, if I'm coming on port tack, certainly what I said is true. But I think even if I'm on starboard tack, I want to make a wide turn. I want to make a wide turn into it.
I would
Am I
agree
right?
with you, JC. I would say with JC, I would not be super wide because you don't want to give a lot of room for the inside boats to come in, but definitely give yourself some room. So you don't, if somebody gets too close to you that comes from a port tack and touches you for whatever reason, you just want, I would just give yourself a little bit of a safety room, that's for sure, until you feel very comfortable with your boat around the mark, that's for sure.
Well,
Yes.
And
JC,
also-
there's another issue here. The other issue is that you really have to plan ahead. You can see the play forming. You can see, oh shit, they're all converging as a group instead of spread out. There's a group on the left, they're about to cross over. How do I duck them and get clear air? All these things are really have to be thought about and discussed with your crew, and as early as possible. He said, how are we, there's the Congo line. They look to be high. There's a shift come in our favor. You know what? Let's cross them and go above them. Let's duck them and cut in. We got a, they used to call it a mushroom up there. We know we can jive and, tack in front of them with no problem. But you have to plan it out ahead instead of be a victim of, I'm really comfortable being here on the starboard ley line. It's really sweet here. And then you watch everybody duck in front of you time after time after time. You go, what the hell just happened? Because you're not really attacking, you're just sailing.
You've been in my boat.
And JC, because we set the marks near the shores with the shore effects, you want to actually point higher than the mark when you're further away from it for a little bit of insurance.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you get up there, you get your header at the wrong time.
No, I've learned that finally, yes.
I mean, on the lakes we sail on, you're saying there's shifty winds?
Well, maybe it's just me. I don't know.
And race committee puts the marks in the coves, okay?
I thought it was just me. Okay.
Hey, JC, last week we talked about planning ahead in order to get to where you want to be at the Windward Mark so that you can round it to be where you want to be when you exit.
Yes.
So all of that is going to affect how high you want to set up coming in. In
Right.
addition to how many other boats are there around, what will they let you do? Are you controlling them or are they controlling you? And how far away from the mark do you want to set up on the starboard tack ley line? And this, like I said, the conventional wisdom is don't come in from the corner because you're very likely to either miss the ley line or overstand it by quite a bit. Come in close enough before you tack onto the starboard tack ley line so that it's easy to see where the ley line is, but far enough away that you can easily find a hole in the line of starboard tack boats if there is a line of starboard tack boats, and far enough away that you aren't bound by Rule 18.3 tacking in the zone.
Mhm.
So
Right.
that conventional wisdom is for most fleets, that would be somewhere in the 5 to 10 boat length range. But that's going to vary from fleet to fleet
Okay.
with boat performance and wind and weather conditions. And actually, I'm planning next week to talk about, well, what if you're coming up to the mark with boats on the same tack, not on opposite tacks? So we'll talk a little bit about that, how you set up based on where you are for that. I hope that was helpful. Any other questions or comments?
No, it was great. I think it was fantastic. I really like this so much.
Thank you,
Nice
Sonia.
one, Eric.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for all the prep work.
All right, guys, have a great week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stay
Yeah.
well, Purell.
Bye.
If you have any questions for me or topics you'd like to see me cover, or topics you would like to cover, I'm perfectly happy to let other people lead a discussion here. Please send your comments to Jolene and I.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.